So hello, everybody. My name is Lishka Arata. I'm Senior Communications Coordinator with Point Blue Conservation Science. And I'm joining you today from Point Blue's headquarters in Petaluma, California. And I'm happy to welcome you to our Live from the Farallones program, White Shark Café. If you're new to Point Blue, we are a California-based nonprofit organization, and our mission is to conserve birds, other wildlife, and ecosystems through science, partnership, and outreach. We have about 160 scientists working throughout California and beyond, from the Sierra to the sea, across 13 countries along the Pacific Flyway from Alaska to Chile, and even as far as Antarctica, studying Adelie penguin ecology and effects of climate change down there. And we've been doing science since 1965. And today we'll be welcoming you to a very special place that we've been studying and caring for since 1968, the Farallon Islands. So I've never been a biologist on the Farallones, but I've brought groceries out there to the Biologist twice with our volunteer Farallon Patrol. Follow up with us if you're curious about what that is and want to join if you have a boat. So I've had the privilege of setting foot on the island briefly. As many of you know, the island is closed to the public. It's a national wildlife refuge managed by the Fish and Wildlife Service, our partners out there. So because it's closed to the public, that makes us extra excited to welcome you to the island virtually. So all of the sensitive island species can remain protected, but we can still share the magic and beauty of it with you. So Point Blue's had biologists on the Farallones 24 hours a day, 365 days a year since 1968. And we're super grateful for our partnership with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which again is the agency responsible for managing the refuge and the partner we've worked with throughout all of these years. So today we'll be chatting with expert ecologist Jim Tietz. He's one of our lead Farallones biologists. We'll also be meeting a couple of our other biologists out there today, and we're going to be focusing on sharks. It's not quite Sharktober, but it's close. So as we go along, please submit your questions via the Q&A function. I'll be turning off the chat function in Zoom pretty soon. But if you are on Zoom, please submit your questions via Q&A. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and put your questions in the comment section, and I'll be relaying those questions to Jim throughout the program. Please ask lots of questions, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. So a little bit about Jim before we dive in here. Jim is not only a migration ecologist, he also embodies his work by moving all around the state throughout the year to track the species that he cares about. So during the fall right now, Jim is the biologist on the Southeast Farallon Island. So out there, he studies the migration and stopover ecology of songbirds, owls, sharks, whales, dolphins, and bats. He's actively studying the effects that climate change is having on songbird size, the timing of their migration, and other effects on their populations. And much of the time on the island, he's also supervising a crew of 3 to 6 biologists, ensuring that data collection is top-notch so that we can track populations of these migrant species over time. In the spring and summer, Jim switches gears and studies LeConte's thrashers at the Carrizo Plain, woodland birds in the Sierra Nevada foothills, and birds in conifer forests above the foothills. Then in August, he migrates back out to the Farallon Islands. So pretty sweet lifestyle, tracking the birds that he's studying throughout the year. And of course, in the downtime, he's got to write reports and publications. Important to share that work out. So with that, I'm going to hand it on over to you, Jim.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Live from the Farallones. Let's see if I can get this on me. My name is Jim Tietz, and I am the Farallon Fall Program Biologist here at the Farallon National Wildlife Refuge, and I've got 2 research assistants here helping me out. I'm gonna hand over to them real quick. We got Dan Maxwell and Jonah Benningfield. Dan's gonna be helping me with the camera, and Jonah is going to be doing shark watch, and hopefully he will spot a shark attack for us during the next 45 minutes. If he does, we'll try to get everybody on it. The chances are pretty low for a shark attack, but who knows? Crazier things have happened out here. All right, so So the location where we are 30 miles to the west of San Francisco and 20 miles south of the Point Reyes National Seashore. We are a few miles north of the Continental Break. And the lighthouse where I'm standing right now is about 300 feet elevation. So as Lishka said, this is the Farallon National Wildlife Refuge, and it's off limits to the public. So this is great that we're able to do this live from the Farallons event. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they manage the island to protect the wildlife and the plants and ecosystem out here. And we've been partnering with them since 1968 and through a cooperative agreement. And we've been the lead biologists to collect data on wildlife, monitoring the populations and other special projects. And it's great that we're able to help influence management with the service, and also to just help understand these amazing species out here. So let's see what else. Intro. So the purpose of this live from the program is this live from Farallons program is just to help the people of San Francisco and the Bay Area to understand this amazing gift that is out here. It's just 30 miles away. It's very difficult for most people to get to because it's only accessible by boat. You could come out on a whale watching trip and get a trip around the island. You get to see a lot of the seals and sea lions, which is really fun. But to actually step foot on the island is a little more difficult. You have to get permission from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to do that. So as we're going, if you have questions about anything I say, please ask Lishka in the chat and she'll relay those. Right now, I want to give you guys a little virtual tour of the island. And I'm going to pick up the camera and we're going to walk around. So, yeah, here we go. So down here, we got Saddle Rock, little islet. And down over here, these are the houses that we live in. The house on the right is the PRBO house. That's the house that we've been staying in since the late 1960s. Out here, this is West End Island. It's connected to the island that we're on, which is called Southeast Farallon Island, by a very small channel. We have a zip line that connects us to that island, so we can go out there and conduct research. So now I'm going to walk around the building, and Dan's going to help facilitate the Wi-Fi. Here you can see Jonah. He was looking out there for sharks. And we're walking out towards the edge here of the lighthouse platform. And out there you can see, hopefully you can see North Farallon and Mid Farallon. Those are two other islet groups that are part of the Farallon National Wildlife Refuge. And over here you can see this is Sugarloaf and a few of the other islets, sometimes referred to as the Devil's Teeth. And out this way to the north, hopefully you guys can just barely make out the Point Reyes National Seashore. Maybe you can see the big mountain out there, that's Mount Tamalpais. And if you're real lucky, this direction, you can see San Francisco and Mount Diablo. That might be a stretch because it's pretty hazy out there. Oh yeah, and this is the lighthouse. Let me back up and give a better look at the lighthouse. So this is the old lighthouse built back in the 1800s. There used to be a large structure up on top where the actual light was, but that when it was modernized, they removed that and replaced it with just a flashing bulb up there. And then you can see some solar panels that are on the roof that used to power the lighthouse, but now we just do that with solar panels down below. All right, so I'm going to head back around. See Dan there providing the Wi-Fi for this.
Jim, we already have a question.
Oh, great. Let me know.
So Lena wonders, and I'm sure this is probably, in your presentation about sharks today, but it's good to start off with this great question. So she's wondering how this year's going so far for the white sharks, and she's wondering if there's any changes to what you're seeing this year compared to others.
So this year started out slowly, which was kind of unusual. Usually we get like maybe 1 or 2 shark attacks in August, and this year we didn't have any. But in the last week, we've had 4 feeding events. We think 3 of them were predation events because we could actually see the blood, but there was one where we couldn't, and it's possible that was just a scavenging event. We're not 100% sure. Sometimes it's difficult for us to see the blood, but I'll talk more about that later. So that's great. I'm glad people are excited about the sharks. So a little more about the Farallon Islands. The Farallones are pretty famous for the numbers of seabirds that breed here. There's 350,000 that breed here in the summer, and then there's tens of thousands of pinnipeds, which are seals and sea lions, which breed on the island as well. And the Farallones are also very famous for the number of birds, migrant birds that have been seen here. So far, the total is 436. We just added one this year, which was a species from South America, which has only been recorded in North America 4 previous times. So pretty cool, lots of diversity out here. It's a very rich ecosystem. So now let's get back to sharks. And sharks are not actually on the refuge, right? Because the refuge only includes the land. The area around the land is the Farallon National Marine Sanctuary. And so the sharks remain out in the water. They don't come onto the refuge. However, the refuge is critical. The sharks are critical to the refuge because they directly influence some of the animals that live here. Their primary food is pinnipeds, the seals and sea lions, and there's 5 species that occur here. There's the harbor seal, there's the northern fur seal, stellar sea lion, and California sea lion, and the northern elephant seal. And the sharks come here in the fall to feed on these species of pinnipeds, primarily the elephant seals and the sea lions. If anybody out there thinks they knows the relative abundance of these, if you guys want to list which are the most abundant and which are the least abundant, go for that in the chat. Let's see if anybody can get all of the pinniped abundances correct out here. And that, those are the species that they're going after. So I want to start talking more about the white shark biology. As most people probably know, the white shark is an apex predator, and what that means is that they are on top of the food chain out here, and they directly influence through top-down pressure on the species that they're preying upon. So, for instance, the California sea lions and the elephant seals are predated on by the white sharks, and that affects probably their behavior, what they're doing. And if a lot of sharks are eating a lot of the pinnipeds, then that's going to reduce their populations. However, we don't think that's really happening out here, that the sharks are reducing their populations here. Especially since California sea lions, their population is greater than it's ever been here. So yeah, the refuge is also, the refuge is very important for these pinnipeds. And some of these species, like California sea lion and northern elephant seal and northern fur seal, have had a lot of pressure on their populations over the years from overhunting. And so this refuge is great because it provides a breeding site and a haul out site that's protected from any kinds of hunting or any kinds of human pressure. And so these populations are able to thrive. And it's these burgeoning populations of pinnipeds that is allowing bringing the sharks here so that they can feed on them. So the sharks, as apex predators feeding on pinnipeds, they're quite large. They're the maximum body length for a female is 20 feet, and the maximum for a male is 18 feet. I remember when I first came out here in 2000 as a research assistant, I remember going out on an attack to get we were trying to get underwater videography of the sharks back then to identify the individuals. This work is still done, but it's done by the Monterey Bay Aquarium and another great group from Stanford. But what I remember about that one time I went out on this one attack that was just right off of Schuberg. Let me show you guys where Schuberg is. It's right down here, and just off to the right out there was where the attack occurred. And we went out there in the boat, and the boat was about 18 feet long. And when the shark came under it, we estimated the length of the shark to be about 19 feet long. And, you know, it wasn't the length of the shark that surprised me so much, but the girth of it. It went directly under the boat, directly underneath me. It's probably just about 5 feet below me. And if I stretch my arms out all the way across, that's about how broad the girth of this shark was going underneath me. And I just thought, wow, that shark could swallow me whole. So that greatly impressed upon me just how powerful the sharks are here. Truly amazing creatures to be so big. And they're big pretty much from birth. White sharks actually give birth to pups. That's what they're called. And when they're born, they are already 5 feet long, which is a very large baby to have. So these pups take quite a while to mature as well. The males take 26 years to mature. Females take up to 33 years to mature. And when they're small, when they're still maturing, they primarily eat fish. And the reason they're eating fish is because their jaws are cartilaginous, like most fish. And so that means that the bite strength within their jaws is fairly weak. And so they can't eat anything really but fish. But when they get about 10 feet to 13 feet long, their jaws begin to mineralize. And when they're up to 13 feet long, their jaws are fully mineralized. And then they're able to start eating pinnipeds. And then for the rest of their life, they will focus their feeding on marine mammals, mostly pinnipeds, but also occasionally whales. And probably more just scavenger nets on that. So sharks have a very high metabolism, and that means that they probably need to eat maybe once every 2 or 3 days. So, I mean, the shark population here can get up to like 20 individuals. And I wish we were seeing all those attacks, but we don't. I remember in 2000 when I was out here, that was a big year for sharks. And I was seeing as many as 5 attacks a day. And that was a lot of attacks to see and witness. And we were also going out on the boat then, so that meant that we had to run down to the East Landing and get the boat in the water and zip out to these attacks. But we don't do that anymore, so it's a little bit easier to deal with that many attacks. But we're not seeing that. So sharks live to be about 70 years old. That's pretty long, but again, the late maturation of them and the fact they only give birth to maybe 2 to 12 pups per year, that means that the populations are highly susceptible to overfishing. And although the white shark is not considered endangered or threatened in California, it is illegal to fish for them or to harass them, like through attracting them to the boat using decoys or something, unless you have a permit to do so. So in 2014, the California population was believed to be at 2,400 individuals. And so let's move on to another interesting fact about white sharks is that they're only here in the fall. They don't occur here in the winter or the spring very much. Like it's the occasional attack here in the winter and spring and summer, but mostly it's just the fall. And so back in the early 2000s, when we were going out on these attacks, we were also attaching a transmitter to the sharks. And these transmitters would, be carried by the shark. And so the transmitter was recording things like the depth that they were, and it was difficult, they were mostly underwater, so it's not getting a good GPS signal. But when these tags were programmed to pop off the sharks at like various time intervals. And so by tagging a whole bunch of them, we were able to figure out that these sharks during the winter and spring travel 1,500 miles out to the middle of the Pacific between Baja California and Hawaii. And shark researchers have nicknamed this place the White Shark Café. And for a long while, it was kind of uncertain what they were doing. We thought that maybe they were out there to find mates, and that's still possible. They probably do go out there and maybe they find mates. But the another possibility is that because researchers just went out there in the last few years and discovered that there's a very complex food web out there. And so it's also very possible these sharks are just heading out there to take advantage of this very rich food source that's out there. And part of that up and down movement that they're doing, like those reporters that they were tracking, was that these sharks are going up and down in the water column, going very deep, coming back up, going very deep. And it's thought that they're tracking these food, the prey that might be out there, or they're looking for mates. We don't know totally what they're doing out there. We're starting to piece things together, but we don't have all the pieces together on this puzzle.
Tim, we have a question in the chat.
Great.
One question from Susanna. Why did you stop going out into the boat to watch the attacks up close? Was it a safety concern?
Yes, yeah. Launching the boat several times a day to do that was considered to be a safety hazard. And right now, the way whenever we launch a boat now, we have to do a lot of go through a lot of OSHA regulations, which requires like checking all the wires to make sure that there's no frayed wires, and making sure that the boat attachments are secure, and all of these regulations that we have, these steps that we have to go through for our safety, have greatly increased the amount of time that it would take us to get out onto an attack. So whereas it used to take us like maybe 5 minutes to launch the boat, now it takes us about an hour to launch the boat. So the attack would be long over by the time we got out there. And so people that used to do, one guy that used to do shark research out here is named Scott Anderson. He started out here in the mid 80s, and he's the one who really got shark research going, him and Peter Pyle. But Scott was really, he's like a shark phenomenon. He is so amazing at spotting the shark attacks out in the water, and he's just very focused on that. And when he could no longer face from the island, he started working with a group that we are cooperating with now called they were out of Stanford. They're called TOPS, or Tagging of Pelagic Predators. And so now, instead of facing from the island, he comes out on a boat every day in October and does the same work. And when we spot shark attacks from the lighthouse, we notify them that there's a shark attack somewhere, and then they can go over and work on the animals from the boat. So it's working out. It's different, you know, and things that evolve, and you know, we gotta stay safe out here. So that's why we are no longer going out in the boats whenever we attack.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for
during attack, then it's really great. We get close-up looks.
Gotcha. Thank you for answering that. And then did you happen to answer the quiz question that you asked already a while back?
No.
We had one guess. I think you asked people to rank in order, like the volume of pinniped that the shark eats. Is that right?
Just the numbers of individuals.
Oh, individuals. Okay, so Lena guessed sea lion, northern elephant seal, harbor seal, stellar, and then fur seal.
Yeah. So maybe 20, 30 years ago, that might have been a correct answer, but currently California sea lions, they are the most abundant, and their numbers just keep increasing and increasing and increasing. Whereas northern elephant seals, their numbers are starting to decline at the island, and we think that's due to climate change. It's becoming more difficult for them to haul out on some of the places where they used to give birth to their pups, and so the overall island population is decreasing, which is interesting. But I want to say about the fur seals, their population is also really increasing. Their population is growing exponentially right now, And so I would say that the California sea lion is number 1, northern fur seal is number 2, and then number 3 is going to be either stellar sea lion or northern elephant seal, and then the phoca, the harbor seals, they're the least abundant out here. And it seems like the sharks, they prioritize their feeding upon the California sea lions and the northern elephant seals. And when they attack the northern elephant seals, from going out in the boat, we were able to learn that the blood from them is a really bright red crimson color, and the carcass floats on the surface. But the sea lions, they tend to sink more, and their blood is darker. That's not as oxygenated as the elephant seal blood. And so it's possible that over the years that we are missing more attacks, because as the California sea lion population increases, and if the sharks are going after more and more sea lions, that we're missing more of the attacks from the lighthouse. And so we are hoping that in the future we can try to answer this question. There's another possibility, is that on the mainland the elephant seal population is actually increasing, and it's now higher than it ever was possible. If you go to the beaches like San Simeon or Point Reyes, you'll find lots of elephant seals that are breeding on the beaches there, and that is also attracting a lot of sharks to those areas. So it's possible that the sharks that were once here, if they truly do specialize on elephant seals, that they've started to relocate to the mainland, and they're going after those elephant seals there. But it's also possible they're still here just going after the sea lions, and we're just missing more and more attacks as the population of pinnipeds shifts from elephant seals to sea lions. So it's interesting. And another dynamic that might be playing out here in the near future is, like I said, the northern fur seal population is growing exponentially. And before American and Russian hunters came here, the population on the Farallones was thought to be hundreds of thousands of fur seals. And currently there's only tens of thousands of pinnipeds of all kinds here. But back in the 1800s, there would have been, the whole island would have been covered in fur seals, which is a crazy thought to think about, since we've never experienced that in our lifetimes. But we know that that's the case because there's records of ships going to China to sell the pelts from these fur seals, and they were carrying. There's hundreds of thousands were sent over there in 1 year, just 100,000, I believe is the number, from 1 year, and they were hunting them for several years. So it's if the fur seals continue to rebound like they are right now, growing exponentially, maybe in 20, 30 years, the island will once again be covered in fur seals. And if that happens, that's going to cause the sharks to perhaps go after them. And I don't know if you've ever seen footage of white sharks going after fur seals down in South Africa, but it's amazing because the fur seals are extremely agile and very fast swimmers, and they try to escape the sharks. And the sharks down there have adapted by going after them, increasing their agility, leaping out of the water after them. It's some truly spectacular footage that has been shown down there of them going after the fur seals. So that might be in our future in a few decades. We'll see.
Wow, that's cool. Thanks, Jim. We have a different kind of fur seal question that popped up in the Q&A from David. David McGuire, have you seen Guadalupe fur seals in the past few years, and how is okay, you just answered how is the northern fur seal count trending, but how about the Guadalupe fur seals?
For a long time, because there were no specimens that were collected of the fur seals during the hunting of the fur seals on the Farallones. No specimens were ever saved in a museum or anything. So it was actually unknown which species of fur seal occurred on the island prior to the 1800s. Some people thought it would be Guadalupe fur seals because they breed down south just south of the Channel Islands. But it's becoming clear that the northern fur seal is the species, because they actually immigrated. They were extirpated from the Farallones. They were also extirpated from the Channel Islands, and the population that repopulated these islands in California was from the Pribilofs and from the Commander Islands. And we know that because we've been tagging the fur seals as well. So we were starting to see people in the Channel Islands were starting to see tags from those populations. And then that population took off before the Farallones did. And now there's maybe 10, 15,000 northern fur seals that breed on San Miguel. And those animals then started to repopulate the Farallones back in the late 1990s. Well, back in the 1970s, they started showing up, but back in the 1990s, they started to start breeding again. So since then, now currently we're seeing like 830. This year we had 830 pups. I think this was the highest count ever, and that's not. That there's areas of the island where we can't see them. We can't see all of the rookery. So the pup population is probably higher this year than that, maybe 1,000. I'm not sure exactly how many it would have been. But hopefully we'll get a better grip on how many are actually over there. And we have started tagging them. I'm actually gonna let Pete handle this topic. He's gonna do a fur seal presentation in a month. So I don't want to steal all of his thunder. Are there any more questions about white sharks right now, Mishka?
Oh, one question just popped into two questions just popped in. And before I share these questions with you, I just wanted to say on Facebook, Jenny Irby says hello and thank you for the view of the Farallones, the former Point Blue biologist. And if you're on Facebook, please do send your comments and questions in the comments under the live video. And then going to our Q&A in the Zoom, Diane Hales says she's wondering whether the warm water blob and subsequent rises in water temperature had any impact on the populations of the Farallones, and has there been change this year with colder temperatures?
I think it's a little too early for us to say if there's been any change this year because of the cold, because the shark season's really just started. October is kind of the biggest month for shark attacks, and that's when we'll see the bulk of the attacks, and we'll know a lot more about how this year was after. And even November is another big month for sharks, so not until after November will we know how the season rates or ranks amongst all the other years. But that does I could talk about trends more about the trends that we've seen for the attacks out here. Back in the 1970s, when PRBO or Point Blue just started out here, we started seeing shark attacks out here on pinnipeds, but we didn't know what species it was, and so we were documenting these attacks. But it wasn't until the mid-70s when we got some good photos finally of a shark, and experts were able to identify them as white sharks. And in 1987, that's when we started doing the standardized shark watch from the lighthouse. And in 1993, that's when we saw the most shark attacks in a year, and that was 77 attacks in 1 year. But then in 1997, the number of attacks plummeted to only 11. And what happened was that in late September or early October, I can't remember the exact date, a female orca and her calf came up to the island, and the female just immediately swam up to a shark and killed it. It was very easy for the killer whale to do. It knew exactly how to do it, and it appeared that it was teaching its a child or young orca how to kill shark as well. And the way that they did it, the killer whales kill the sharks is just by grabbing them on the nose and then holding them upside down. And the way that a shark breathes is that it breathes by swimming through the water. And so if a shark is immobilized, it can't breathe. If it's grabbed on the nose, where many of their sensory organs are, it's highly stimulated and can't probably figure out what's happening. And then flipped upside down by the killer whale, it's just completely confused and lost. And the killer whale easily incapacitated and then killed the shark. So after that, the killer whale then pulled out the liver out of the shark. And it's thought perhaps that it's that liver oil spreading through the water, or somehow all the sharks in the Farallon ecosystem learned of this, and they just all fled. And at that point, we didn't have tags on them, so we didn't know exactly what was happening, but there were no more attacks after that, the killer whale attack. And so we knew that something was going on, but it was not totally clear until 2000 and 2013, when we documented other orca attacks on white sharks. And then we had tags on them, and we saw that all the sharks immediately fled. In 2000, the orca attack was in November, and all those sharks then fled just straight. Some of them fled straight out into the Pacific, because they were done probably feeding. They had enough food and energy for their migration out to the middle of the Pacific, and so off they went. In 2013, it was a little bit earlier, and I think it was late October, and a lot of those sharks probably still needed more food, and so a lot of them redistributed to the California coastline. And actually, I'm sorry, that was 2009 when that happened. Yeah, Dan was here for that, and so that was maybe like the third or fourth day he was here, and suddenly there were no more sharks. So Dan had a much different first year than I did when I was out here in 2000. And so, like I said, in 1997, the population there was very few shark attacks. We only saw 11 attacks. In 2000, there were 70 attacks. And then since then, the number of attacks we're detecting is just slowly declining. And we don't know fully the answer why that is, but we're hoping that we can collaborate with the Monterey Bay Aquarium and with Stanford to come up with these answers. And one way I'm hoping that we can do this is by getting samples from the sharks. And I know that the researchers on the boats have been doing this, is look at those samples, and from the samples try to determine what their diet is, and see if the diet of white sharks at the Farallones has shifted over the years from elephant seals to sea lions, and also compare the sharks here at the Farallones with the sharks that are along the California coast. If the ones that are mostly spending most of their time near these elephant seal colonies, you'd think that they would have a different signal in the tissue samples that are showing that they're eating elephant seals, whereas these here might be eating more California sea lions. So that's some future research that we're hoping to do out here. It would be really exciting to figure that out.
We have 3 questions in the Q&A here, and we're running low on time, but I think we might be able to answer these questions before we wrap up our shark program here. Are you ready for them, Jim?
Sure, bring them on.
Okay, so Lena is wondering, with the tagging, are you able to identify individuals? And if you can, do you see the same sharks year after year?
So we identify individual sharks by the scars and scratches and other things that markings that they have on their bodies. And that's what the underwater videography is for, is to identify individuals. Scott Anderson has been working on that since the 1990s, I would believe. And so the way that we determined that there were 2,400 individuals in the California ecosystem is based on that mark resite data. We're not actually marking them. We're just going out and figuring out the unique features, the unique markings on each shark, and then getting resite data on those individuals. So we can see some sharks are returning to the island every year. And those are the males. The males actually come back to the island every year, whereas the females only come back every other year. And it's thought that because the females have to give birth to those pups, that they're going possibly to the Channel Islands and doing it. I think there's more young sharks that have been seen down there, so it's surmised that that's where they give birth to these sharks, to these pups. But I don't think anybody's ever seen a white shark give birth to a pup. So where they actually do it, I think is still a bit of a mystery to us.
Wow, so much to learn still. And Susanna asks, how do seabirds interact with sharks during an attack? Is it true that the gulls carry entrails into the air above the feeding frenzy?
This is true. Sometimes we call those gull kites because there's a gull hovering above the attack with a long intestine down to the attack. But yeah, it's interesting. The only birds that really can benefit from the attack are the gulls, because they are eating the little tidbits off the water. So when there's a shark attack, there's this feeding frenzy around the attack of all these gulls just like hovering over it. And then above that, you have all these other gulls that are circling, going down to it, coming up. It's pretty chaotic. And then all that commotion also attracts a bunch of other birds. So sometimes you'll see like 100 pelicans will be circling over the top of the attack. Maybe, and then sometimes they'll land, but usually there's like the feeding, I think, is the behavior of the gulls is not what they're seeing, not what they're used to. They're not seeing fish swimming around in there. And so eventually the pelicans will disperse. Sometimes cormorants will land in there too. But yeah, it's pretty much just the gulls that are going to benefit off of a shark attack.
Nice. And David asks, have you seen any recent sightings of orcas? It sounds like he's heard of a report in July that there was a sighting.
Yes, there was a sighting here in July, which must have been very exciting for the guys here to see. But thankfully, we haven't seen any orcas yet. If we do, then probably our shark season will be over. That's just the way it goes. Yeah, it's an amazing dynamic with orcas and sharks, that orcas truly are the top predator out here, the apex predator of this ocean. But thankfully for the sharks, their population is a lot lower than the sharks at seas. Nice.
And maybe our last question of the program, I don't think you've answered this yet. How do you determine the sex of a shark?
The males have claspers. There are these little fins that they have on the underside of their body, and that's how you can determine the sex. The females don't have it.
Awesome, thank you.
So I guess that's going to wrap up. Is this the last question?
Yep, no more questions coming in.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining this live from the Farallon events. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Next month, Pete will be going hopefully over to West End and doing a fur seal live from the Farallon over there, and that should be pretty exciting to watch. I will be on break then, but I will definitely be watching it at home on the mainland. If you enjoyed this talk and you want to check out more of the research that we do, please visit our website at pointblue.org, and you can learn more about what we're doing here, and we appreciate the visitation. All right, that's wrapping it up here live from the Farallones.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.